I may not be smart or know what I'm doing, but I've got the same access to the tools as the people that do. So, see what happens. He still needs to add his rear fiberglass, or I'm sorry, rear plexiglass for the window. This is kind of where the, I might not be doing it the right way, but I'm gonna be doing it a way, comes into play. One of those pieces of aluminum hit me right in the freaking lip halfway through that. Well, decided to work on the Hilux today because it's so nice out and warm, and you definitely can't see my breath in here while I'm working. I've actually been really anxious to get started on this, so the weather is not going to get in our way. To kind of start off again with what we have going on here, this is my buddy Teeny's Toyota Hilux. Recreating the Toy Story truck, obviously. More of a 90s mini truck fashion in doing so. Completely on board with that. As you'll notice, the bed topper is a little too long, or way too long. This is the closest thing, it's almost a spot on representation of the bed topper on the truck in Toy Story. It was for a different generation Toyota pickup, so needless to say we have to shorten it a bit. There's pictures of this truck all over with the topper on, and it looks proportionate. What he did was Teeny went ahead and cut off the front of this topper and just slid this forward for the last bit of the season so he could drive it with the topper on, which looked good from about 5-10 feet away, but it was never right. Still want to have the front of this topper on here. Want it to be all one piece. He is getting this repainted, and it does only need to have one of these two little porthole windows. The truck in the cartoon only has one. This doesn't have room for two anyways. So it's all just gonna be cleaned up here. I'm not gonna say I have no idea what I'm doing with this. I have a very good idea. I haven't worked with fiberglass in a while, but I have worked with it a lot. So the method I go on shortening this and making it fit isn't necessarily gonna be, I don't know, maybe the right way. It's not going to be the wrong way either. There's a million ways to do this. This is the way that makes the most sense to me. So we're going to go about it that way. The main thing I want to do here first, before even measuring how much we're taking out of that, is I need to straighten up this cut. I'm just going to work with straight 90s here. We're just going to measure it straight 90. I know I think I measured damn near a foot we can get rid of. I'm not even gonna get rid of all that in this part that I'm gonna do here, but I just wanna have a straight 90 on one piece, straight 90 on the other piece, and then I'm gonna bring them together, see how much we have left over, and cut that remaining part out. After that, I'm gonna go about setting this up in some sort of a jig or clamps or something to keep it together, fiberglass it from the inside out, take care of the outside, probably finish it off with a skim coat of fiberglass body filler, and sand and get it to look even. And then after that, Teeny's gonna take this whole topper to one of his other guys and have it, like I said, repainted. Whole thing's gonna look new. I think he did mention getting these windows tinted, so he's gonna have that all done, and he still needs to add his rear fiberglass, or I'm sorry, rear plexiglass for the window. So it's got plenty of other work to be done after I'm done with it, but this is the first major step in him finishing the look he's going for. So let's get to it.
Okay, let's go.
So the first thing I'm going to do is just square off this metal piece on the bottom. So we've got our straight edge there. This is we're going to do a straight cut here. Now those lines might not look like straight 90s. Don't know if the truck's level on the ground, which is why I'm using a straight edge. Regardless of the truck being level or unlevel, these are going to be true 90 degrees up here, so it'll give us a straight cut either way. Mark the other side, carry the line over, probably use some painter's tape, and start cutting. 12 3/8 from the front of this to our 90 there, so we're going to bring that over to the other side and do the same thing. 12 3/8 roughly. All right, gonna scoot this back, pull these windows off, maybe take this off first, pull the windows off, and run this line the whole way and start cutting it and get our first straight edge. Then we'll come back and work on the second piece and kind of slide them together. I don't know what you're doing, man. You're hanging plants in here, chandelier. I don't know what that is. We're getting rid of this stuff. I'll save it for you so you can rehang whatever you had up there. So I've played this next part out over in my head 20-30 times on how I'm going to do this. This is kind of where the I might not be doing it the right way, but I'm going to be doing it a way comes into play. I'm going to cut that first mark we made and then use that as a straight edge to follow the line further up the camper shell later, and then match the two to cut the top. I may not be smart or know what I'm doing, but I've got the same access to the tools as the people that do, so see what happens. Well, it kind of worked, but I just realized now I need to go back about another, we're gonna go 2 inches to make this a little easier, because basically this plane right here is too close to where the cut already is. So it's not gonna give it a whole straight edge. I just need to drop it further back. So we're gonna do that and then recut. Now, some of the tools I'm using probably aren't going to be the most ideal for what I'm doing, or aren't the correct way again. Keep in mind though, this is fiberglass. I'm going to be building it back up. We've got wiggle room. safety glasses, but I can't find my face shield. I guess it's not like my welding mask doesn't have a grind function on it. I should probably do that, being that one of those pieces of aluminum hit me right in the freaking lip halfway through that. Now what I'm gonna do is take this piece of cardboard with a straight edge on it. It'll kind of be able to contour the side of this so that I can carry this line a little bit up to here and then meet it on top. Once again, doesn't have to be real precise, just in the ballpark since we're gonna be fiberglassing this anyways. And that's terrible. I should see if we got a bigger piece of cardboard. Just gonna keep it going with the wrong tool again. Let's see, contour that straight edge. It's actually matching up pretty good. Extend it with a real straight edge since we're on the flat spot now. So now, at least on the front side, we have a decently straight cut, a little whoop-de-doo in the middle. But this will give us a much better idea of how much we got to take off still. This right here shows you why we need to actually cut both of these at a straight 90. If you look, the top's touching, bottom still has a bunch of distance between it. So we need to go straight up on this so they can at least sit together somewhat flush. Then we can measure how far off the back that's hanging. So now we got to mark the back half of this. Not looking forward to cutting this because I've got to get this all the way off the truck. Got to mark this the same way, cut it, and then slide it back on and see how much more we have to take off. Well, I can't measure off this edge because of the wonky cut that's on it. I could probably take a point off this window, measure out, and hit it with a straight edge. I would like to think these windows are both in the same spot on each side. I don't know that they are. For all I know, it could be a little off, and that might cause me a lot more work. I highly doubt it, but to be honest, what's going to be easier for me is measuring from the back. It's a fixed point. Measure how far forward I want it, mark it on both sides. I think. Bring a mark down. Off that mark, we're gonna go 6 inches. I know, this isn't the right way to do it. But it's gonna get us where we need to be. All right, ignore my prior measurements. Ignore half the lines on this side of the camper shell. I figured out a much better, much less cringier way to measure and cut this. Once again, this is the first time ever attempting this. So I might just be making up my own methods as we go. But I figured something out as I was measuring it, and needless to say, we're better off now. So I'm gonna cut the back half of this, see how close they are together, keeping in mind they don't have to be perfect. We're gonna have to cut the front again at some point. And like I said, it's fiberglass, so we can add, and we'll have to add material back either way. So this is just the rough cut, fast part of this. Still a cleaner cut than what was on here, but it's a rough cut as far as the grand scheme of things. So let's get back to cutting this. So last night, by the time I finally got this back up on here with one of my buddies giving me a hand to lift it back up, it was too cold and too dark to keep going. You can see it's a lot closer to fitting now. By no means was that our last cut. This was just to give us, you know, a nice straight edge to now measure a more accurate cut to make the camper fit. The rest of these cuts is all just going to be out of the front half. It's a lot easier to pull this off, cut it and put it back on than to move this. I just had to give this a straight cut to start. So now what I'm planning on doing is measuring how much we're overhanging on the rear, since we want the back of this to be flush when we're done. See about 6.5 inches. 6.5. It's not sitting perfectly straight. All right, so yeah, we're in the ballpark of about 6.5 inches too long on the back still. So where I'm gonna start now, let's move this back. Okay. All right, so now what I want to do is take that 6.5 inches out of this, because we are going to use this. The whole goal is to mate this to that and have a one-piece camper shell again. So if I go off our edge that we cut, 6.5 plus there. So we're gonna carry this line up. I'm probably gonna, if anything, if it's gonna cheat one way or the other, I'm gonna angle it more this way. We can always shave this down to put it back. I'd rather have a tighter gap than anything. And, you know, go over this a couple times with a palm sander or a grinder to sand this back down and make it even than, you know, having 3 inches we have to fill with fiberglass. But once again, if you were cutting and measuring this a more accurate way, this wouldn't be an issue, but we're just working with what we got. The amount of times I bring this up makes me realize how guilty I feel about setting these lines and measuring like this. I'll say it again. This isn't the correct way to be doing it, but it will get us in the ballpark. If I was doing this with anything other than fiberglass that we can manipulate real easy, I'd be spending more time in making these more precise, but all of this is going to be kind of taken care of while we're doing the fiberglass. What I'm trying to get at is the way I'm laying down the fiberglass to make this strong is going to kind of defeat the purpose of spending forever and getting these measurements precise, simply because it's going to be honestly just fiberglass and resin everywhere. So if I've got to fill gaps, I've got to fill gaps. If I've got to grind stuff down, I got to grind it down. The amount of time I'll spend doing that is, at least for me, going to be less than it would be to sit here and measure off all of these round edges, not knowing what's level and not. And to be honest, the camper shell's a little wavy too, so it's all kind of throwing me off. But as long as we're in the ballpark of things, I can correct it all with the fiberglass. So you can see we're right on the front edge there, and we are almost about where we need to be on this back edge. Still got some excess I can shave up here. Kind of looking at this. This side is actually good. The far side, I gotta figure out what's going on. And let me show you why. So this side's sitting, if I just use my eyes, sitting about 1 inch off the back. This side's maybe 1/4 inch. Now I know I didn't measure it the most precise way. Not a problem. I expect it to be a little bit off there. Here's my concern. This camper shell is flush against the front of the bed here, as it is on the other side. But look at this gap between the truck and the camper shell. I haven't measured it yet, but it's about 1 inch more opened up on that side than it is right here. Now some of that's gonna eat up the differences we had there. Actually, it's gonna push it backwards more. So if I correct this, that's gonna sit further off. The reason this is throwing me off could be the camper shells. Like I said as earlier, a little wavy, a little warped. Could be body mounts in the truck. Could be bed mounts. I have to measure a couple areas and see why I have so much more of a gap here than I do on that side, even though the camper shell's sitting on the front of the bed on both sides. Now keep in mind, haven't touched this edge, same with the other side. All of this is the way it would have been from the manufacturer. So either meaning it's almost touching the cab down there. So I'm gonna scoot this back a little bit and see if I can get this to sit square on there and see what's actually going on. And get with the owner and see, would he rather us kind of cheat this to make the gap look good, but then when you look at the bottom, the driver's side is gonna be pushed back a little bit? Or would he rather have it flush with the bed and it's gonna be kind of close on this side? So do some measuring real quick and see what we're actually working with. So I took some measurements, talked to the owner, kind of have a little bit of a game plan here. The big thing I noticed when taking measurements is that the bed itself sits about 1/2 inch closer to the back of the cab on the driver's side than the passenger side. Maybe a little under a ½ inch. You don't even notice it until the camper is on there, because then you have something so much closer to the back of the truck to see that there's not a gap. It's an older truck. It's not going to be perfectly square. The bed's not going to be square to the cab, and I don't think any of the bed or the body mounts are going. It's just simply an old truck. Who knows? It may not have even been perfect from the factory. I'm sure stuff had such looser tolerances back then. More so, it's an old fiberglass camper shell. I'm sure this thing was never made perfect. There's a couple different variables. And then of course you have my uneven cuts. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna even up the cuts a little more first. When I get it cut square, if anything's still a little off, our main idea was basically just, we're gonna kind of make these rails sit good on the bottom here. Make sure this looks right at the bottom, you know, lined up with the bed and whatnot. And then if we need to, we're gonna kind of cheat that side shorter than this side with the fiberglass. Just, I mean, like I said, that's if the back's still hanging off a little bit further on one side than the other. We're gonna make up for it on this. So basically kind of pivot this back half and pivot the front half so that they fit the edges good, but then in the middle, we'll just make up for it by grinding and adding material, so that it all looks good. Here's basically what we're looking at right now. Much better with that line cut straight. Ignore the back half for right now. Much straighter now. Corrected the gap, at least visually. Actually, this has got to come forward a little more, but correct the gap kind of where I want it to sit. Because of that now, I hate to say it, I've got a cut right there. I do have to straighten this up. Probably do that in the garage, I guess. I really don't want to take this shell back off and bring it out there multiple times, but it's gonna fight me the entire time if I try to kind of grind this down to fit that. That's gonna suck our camper shell right up to where we need it. Give or take a little bit, but we're gonna be close. Now, the reason I need to cut this is, you'll see, we don't have much of a gap here. Bottom's lined up good, but I do need to just come back a little more and go straight up. These measurements along the rail are good. A lot of this is just because it's an old fiberglass shell, it's warped and whatnot. So even if I measure off something, there's no saying for sure that that's square, and this is where we're gonna see it. So I wanna take some material out of this edge right here. That gap looks fine. Here down, I wanna widen up a little bit. Toyota's windows are closed. Mazda's windows are closed. Engine is bagged up. I guess we're gonna do this. All right, let's start grinding it in the garage. Honestly, I'm kind of just hoping I can let my hoodie eat most of the fiberglass dust instead of it going all over the shop. So, wish me luck. We are getting close. It's real close to fitting. Passenger side, I'm not even touching this gap anymore. I'll show you why here in a second. But everything's good there. Got a nice straight line across. Back here on the passenger side, I mean, I would take that. It's gonna scoot up a little bit. It's got about a 1/8 inch with that gap that it can scoot up, but this channel right here is where that rear window is gonna sit. And you kind of want it to rest outside of this, outside of this, so that the glass can close. It's looking much better. I want to take down a little bit of this corner and bring it in. I mean, we're touching here. I may just shave this all back a little bit more. The main part is right up in this corner. It's touching though. So something I just noticed, I'm glad I caught before I cut too much more out of this. This front piece here, sometimes when I'm lining this up, it's sitting a little further back like this. I just now realized it because these two metal pieces on the bottom didn't line up just a second ago when I thought my cut was off. What I'm gonna do real quick is mount this front half in place just to avoid any kind of issues we'd have from anything moving around. It would suck to be sitting here all day cutting this just to find out something shifted and I was way off. When I took that front piece back off, I realized there's already 2 holes right where I needed them pretty much in the front of the bed. So rather than drilling more holes in the bed, I marked them from underneath. Gonna pull that front piece back off, drill those through, and that's how I'm gonna mount that down before we finish grinding and cutting this. With that being said, I'm out of time. I've gotta go. My wife and I are going to dinner tonight, early dinner. I've gotta go to Minnesota tomorrow for work. So we're going to continue back on this next Friday. Thanks again for checking this out and stay tuned for us finishing this up. Thank you.